Our next session is going to be on genetic counseling and newer advances by none other than Dr. Hema Purandare, whom we call the Wonder Woman. Of course, she's been awarded also as the Wonder Woman by Zydus Nutreva. Dr. Hema Purandare has been the founder director, Center for the Genetic Healthcare, the founder past president of ISPAT India, the ex-director of SRL Diagnostic Centers for Genetic Healthcare. With more than 11 publications and books and over 5 CSR activities, which has really got her to be a Wonder Woman, and being an associate professor at Grant Medical College, genetic counseling at Wadia Hospital in Mumbai, and at Apple Aster Aadhar Hospital in Kolhapur. She has been doing wonderful job. I remember meeting her somewhere in 1995 or 96, and she remains the same smiling, beautiful lady. Dr. Hema Purandare, who's a consultant and medical director, prenatal and reproductive genetics. I welcome her and request her to please take the next session on genetic counseling and newer advances. Welcome, Dr. Hema.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor. Now, it's indeed a great pleasure to be part of this wonderful webinar with experts are sharing their experiences in anomaly scans, NT scans, and also various parameters which are used in fetal screening. So it's very important that a genetic counseling is offered at whatever stage you have an opportunity to meet the patient. It may not be as perfect as the geneticist can give, but the opinion, like I heard the discussions, panel discussion also, opinion taking from one doctor to other really puts patient into lot of dilemma. So I think I will be able to solve some problems what we have been discussing. I pay tribute to my gurus first before I begin actually. And I think without gurus, I mean, nobody can learn and nobody can get the advices. I was fortunate enough because those days genetics was not available in India, but I could take from all the stalwarts who were in Western countries. So again, I'll just move on now with this. And let me just tell you about the history of genetics has been only of 150 years. And this 150 years, basically from 1953, like whenever the DNA molecule was deciphered by Watson and Crick, to 2003, when the Human Genome Project was completed, the words which uttered from mouth of none other than director of Human Genome Project, that is, the molecule was by Dr. Both Watson and Crick, and then Watson said that what was known to God is known to us after the genome was completed. And 2003 onwards now, the new terminology, that is genomic, is also introduced. So whatever tests are coming, now we are able to do many more tests. Now, why are these tests necessary? Do we require, why do we really require the genetic counseling or high-end genetics test? Look at the figures. Over 1 billion babies are born each year with genetic disorders having high mortality and morbidity, and those can be multi-organ disorders or intellectual disability or both. These are caused by any alteration in structure, function, number, or function of the genes or its products. It can present from conception to adulthood. So genetic disorders need not be present only at fetal life. You have adult polycystic kidney disease, you have got Huntington's disease. So these are adult genetic disorders, but even if you do chorion biopsy at 2.5 months, you are able to diagnose these disorders. So you have to remember that they are not always present at birth, but you will be able to pick them up even at the higher age. Now, need for frequent hospitalization involves enormous cost in management, and over 50 million people have single gene disorders which can be recessive, dominant, or X-linked. Now, single gene disorder persons are not affected, but they are definitely carriers, and practice of consanguineous marriages increases the total load. Now, this opens various reproductive options, right, from not having a child to IVF to donor gametes, or maybe to take a donor embryo as well. Now, genetic test result apply to patient as well as family. So when you see a case which is having a genetic disorder, at least we leave no opportunity to guiding patients that yes, you have to also tell your family members that they could be also at risk. Of course, it involves ethical, legal, social issues, cultural issues. So genetic counseling thus is an integral part of the healthcare system. The word genetic counseling was coined by Sheldon Reed in the year 1947, and today the genetic counseling definition is as the process of helping people understand and adapt to the medical, psychological, and familial implications of genetic contributions to a disease. I always say that genetic counseling is like a Krishna, who, when the Arjuna on the battlefield was saying that Siddhanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishishyati. So he was not able to because all his relatives were there on the field. And then Sri Krishna told him that, yes, I will give you solutions. Nadari shastra karimi goshti sangyana yukti chachara. So I will tell you the strategies which will help you to fight this war. And of course, for us also, in genetic counseling, we do the same thing. We try to find out identifying the at-risk cases. At-risk cases, as it was already uh, discussed earlier, starts from a proper family, proper history. Three generations pedigree construction is important, which is by use of the symbols which are shown on the right side. Now, in this history, it will be personal and family medical history. Clinical examination, we may have the reports from the various consultants because it is multi-speciality references we get. So if it's an orthopedic case, we have to review those reports. So clinical examination or the reports, confirmatory diagnosis by way of various tests, calculation of the recurrence risk. Of course, calculation has no meaning because no meaning in the sense for us to plan the test, but for patients, 1% is also going to be 100%. What are the available options that we have to discuss? And of course, with that, it should always be non-directive. It's a very important point which all of you also remember. Must remember that anytime patients say they don't want to do the test, but the pregnancy is lost. Okay, so importance of DNA storage because it's index case evaluation is most important in genetic diagnosis. So even if they don't do any tests on the baby, at least try to get a sample and store it. Most of the prenatal diagnosis tests also we are doing it. Importance of family, if you see this history, the pedigree of Elizabeth, she had so many marriages and progeny having, from different marriages. If you would have had to write her history, it would have been like involving few pages. So importance of writing the history in the pedigree format. Again, my appeal to all medical people who are dealing with the disorders or birth defects of genetic or non-genetic origin to take the family history so that if there is anything behind, we'll be able to guide it, whether it is of a chromosomal single gene disorder, having dominant recessive, sex-limited, sex-dominant, sex-linked recessive. It can also be multifactorial like neurotube defects or mitochondrial disorders. There are more than 150 mitochondrial disorders. So history will tell us it might be sometimes in dominant disorder, a generation might skip. Or in recessive disorders, both the partners are carriers and they may not be, they may be having consanguineous marriage and then having affected children. So we say that 25% risk is there, but by saying 25% doesn't mean if couple has got 2 children, the next other will be normal. So it's very, very important to note down this history and just find out the families. So now genetic and genomic tests. Now we have got plethora of tests available. We have seen all ultrasound tests and we are into diagnostic odyssey. Now, what can happen that with newer imaging and lab technologies, hopes of the family are increased and risk and responsibilities of the physicians are added. Next. Now, choosing a test, time, tissue, and limitation. Now, there are number of tests, laboratory tests from karyotyping to next generation sequencing, and which test has got application and what is the limitation. It is not possible to discuss all this, but I suggest you can take a photograph of this and then don't jump into high-end tests. Just go through it and always take the opinion from your colleagues who would be just one phone call away. So which test to choose? Now, genetic screening tests, we have discussed many tests. I want to add on only few things to it. That is carrier screening. Now, tests are like population-based, but carrier screening we can do for 2000 autosomal recessive and some X-linked recessive genes. Each individual has got average of 2.8 known severe recessive mutations, so we are not affected. And more than 80% babies are born with inherited genetic disorders, have no known family history. I was insisting on family history. But what here I'm trying to say, that now we are getting many couples who even after marriage, or especially in consanguineous marriage, the screening test must be done, because so that we are able to pick up high risk case before they get an affected child. So they come, they say we want to do all the screening, we don't want to take the chances. So whatever is available, we can offer them. Now preventive tests are there for adult genetic disorders, because as I said, we can detect it as early as 2.5 months. Huntington, adult polycystic kidney. Some predictive tests are familial cancers, and then newborn screening of our familial cancers also. And newborn screening, we all know, just 2 drops of blood or even hearing and cardiac evaluation by newborn screening is offered. So this is a list of screenings we should offer, and we should discuss with the patient that yes, even these tests are available. All screening tests must have a confirmatory diagnostic test, because most of them are performed on healthy asymptomatic individuals. So only just getting scared by these screening tests showing high risk, you should not lose a chance of getting an confirmatory test done. So indications are soft markers, abnormal ultrasound findings, positive maternal serum screening, high risk of NIPT, advanced maternal age, consanguinity, ethnicity, previous pregnancy, child or family history of genetic disorder or neurological defect. And I discuss about the expanded carrier screening for autosomal disorders. Prenatal diagnosis should have a planned approach. So in planned approach, we should have post pre-testing counseling and post-testing counseling facility. It is not good for a laboratory just to give the report and say, okay, this is the report, high risk. You should be able to give post-test counseling or letter to your doctor. So when we are choosing a test and the tissue, we have to see that, and also the selecting the center, whether center has accreditations, reports with interpretative comments is available, or it is also important to have an informed consent which says read and understood. Now, parental screening may be required. You may find some kind of disorder in a child, and then you want to know whether it is a new mutation or it is the parental screening is necessary. So that also may add when you are doing pre-test counseling. Challenges, of course, when ultrasound markers are there, clinical phenotype is indirect because of the fetus. So directly planning a test becomes very difficult. Many traits cannot be assessed in utero, and possibility of maternal cell contamination is always seen in the tissue, and how to clean the tissue. I can just come to that. What the law is going to look into, first just look into this, whatever I have discussed. We all know we abide by law, but law is going to always find out what mistake you have made during doing a test. So decision to offer testing, whether it was right or wrong. Choosing a test because it was based on the history. Choosing a test, timing is everything. Selecting a center, I have already mentioned. Testing itself, laboratory and obstetric. Informed written consent, we have said, and post-test counseling, interpreting and follow-up. Now, method of sampling, today we have got two methods, chorion villus sampling and amniocentesis and cord blood at later gestation. Chorion biopsy can be performed by cervical and transabdominal route, and tissue contamination happens in the particular this chorion villus sampling. And for molecular testing, now chorion villus sampling is a preferred tissue, because molecular tests have got very long turnaround time. But to avoid maternal cell contamination, we clean and take clean villi as shown in this petri dish. Another thing is that for molecular testing, you also require maternal blood in EDTA to rule out maternal cell contamination. In addition, for chromosomal, just cleaning of the villi is sufficient. Now, in amniocentesis, what we can do in chorion biopsy, everything is done in amniocentesis, but we have to grow the culture, so that takes additional time. And then the limit of termination, what is permitted by law, may not be possible. But yes, we can use if you are identified any disorder at a later stage. Another thing that last which I have said put here, that missed chromosomal disorder. See, there is a syndrome called as Pallister-Killian syndrome, and usually it is seen in diaphragmatic hernia and intrauterine growth retardation. In at that stages, we have already missed on chorion villus sampling. It may be late for amniocentesis, then we do cord blood. But if you do cord blood, you are going to miss this, because this tissue or this abnormality is expressed only in fibroblast culture, and therefore your amniocentesis, even if it is at later gestation, must be done. Results and interpretation most critical. Now for chromosomal disorders, if there is a straightaway syndrome like 13, 18, 21, then we know it is clear there is no dilemma. In sex chromosomal abnormality results in prenatal diagnostic samples, because you know that definitely the individual will have hypogonadism, but some of them can have intellectual deficiency as well. So firstly, you have to explain to them, and just explaining them extensive genetic counseling is required. If they are ready to accept, because we have got so many professionals also who are Klinefelter. There are also some Turner syndrome patient, even triple X. We have economists who is having triple X. So, you know, what would be the consequences if this continue the pregnancy becomes very important. For uncommon trisomies, further tissue is required to reconfirm. If the fetus is having translocation, that means one chromosome is cut and gone on the other chromosome, you have to do parental test. If you get a marker chromosome also, you have to do that. And if normal karyotype is there and structural abnormality is then on ultrasound, so even the normal karyotype should be further evaluated. Because once you finish your karyotyping everything by 18, 20 weeks and you find some at later gestation anomaly, especially skeletal dysplasia, you will still have to have a microarray done, because then only karyotype will not suffice. And this is the advantage of storing DNA. So you don't have to do invasive tests again, but you can analyze the tissue and go for further testing. In molecular testing, interpretation becomes very difficult for, because molecular tests are complex. You need expert and long turnaround time. If you have done the tissue procedure, the tissue sampling procedure at later stage, again the time is very short. The reports come as pathogenic, likely pathogenic, variant of uncertain significance, likely benign, or it can be benign. Now, patient has spent so much money, and you are going to tell them after getting the report, this they are not going to accept. So even post-test counseling, what result can come, you have to discuss when you are doing the sampling. And because of there are certain analysis, like if it is likely pathogenic, it will be more complex to discuss and will take a lot of time. But if patient is coming, say, if in likely pathogenic after 2 years for next pregnancy, reanalysis of previous result, or sometimes we get report from somewhere that baby was having this kind of abnormality, which was like likely pathogenic, and we discontinued the pregnancy. Now we want to know what will happen next time. So within 2 years, new Mendelian phenotypes may be added each other. So you don't have to do DNA analysis again, but you have to reanalyze the data. So money is saved. But without that, because maybe what was likely pathogenic can be pathogenic now. So it's very important. Now, in order to find out more and more, as I said, after Genome 2003, genomic, when the Human Genome Project, we have completely sequenced, like this will last for as long as human race lasts. So our genome is completely sequenced, but to find out what could be the results of those abnormalities is still getting added. And extensive genomic variation and individuality has long impact also on personalized and precision medicine, because we are into that era. It is not only diagnose and if not possible, give option of discontinuation or continuation to the patient. We want to have a therapy, because prognosis, which is important for patients, we can tell them, okay, you have got this particular problem, but there will be some precision medicine available for you. Now, for that, sequencing data is from various countries, and MedGenome is founding member of Genome Asia 100K, initiated to sequence 100,000 genomes in the Asian population, because there can be variation and therefore it might affect the precision medicine. Now let's come to the case scenarios. I think this is the most important part of this presentation, because in Down syndrome now we are doing more than 2,000 prenatal diagnosis sampling per year. And every month we get maximum, or yearly also we get maximum number of references for Down syndrome, which is now done by FISH or karyotype on the sample which you take, whether CVS or amniotic fluid. Now, usually the tendency is do FISH, okay, if it is not trisomy, you know, baby is normal. So that is not sufficient. You have to do complete karyotype, even if they are going to cross their legal limit of termination, because the chromosomal abnormalities which you see in trisomy 21 can be direct trisomy, or it can be translocation, especially like 14-21, as you can see, or it can be 21-21. Now, if parent, then you do parent, because if they are having a translocation carrier, if parent is having 21-21 translocation, all the babies, it will be 100% recurrence risk. So low in single gene, low in mosaicism, the low in 8 to 14% in 14-21, but if a parent is having 21-21, all babies are going to be trisomy 21. In addition to that, now with this molecular technology, partial trisomy also is seen in Down syndrome cases. So clinically, phenotypically, baby is perfectly normal. But if you see, not normal, I'm sorry, showing perfectly, all the markers of Downs, but you can see that, but chromosomal or fish, chromosomal, everything is looking normal. Then you have to ask them to have microarray done because it's a critical region. Triplication of this region, which is mentioned here, is responsible for Down phenotype as well. In Down syndrome, it's or any syndrome now, inclusion in the society is very important. Of course, I have already told you importance of parental karyotype. Now, inclusion in the society, because some of the Down syndrome patients are really, you can say, almost near normal. This is a picture of two of my patients. One is a chef who had recently come because he wants to marry now. And the other one is Gauri Gadgil, that yellow film came. So all the conferences now, or when you counsel the patient also, and if it is high risk, you must tell them if you continue the Prexi, there are achievers worldwide, and they can always go on the net and find out. Now, the next one is only, again, as I said, if fish is not sufficient. Now, this case, the title of this slide is MTP, yes or no, what the law demanded. This is just last month or couple of months back, we got this test. Hypoplastic nasal bone, probably they missed out on testing earlier. It was at 19 weeks. A fish report was normal. We always insist on complete karyotype, and karyotype had shown additional marker on chromosome number 9P. So that segment was definitely any addition or less of chromosomal material is going to be pathological. So we gave report as pathologic chromosomal material of unknown origin is pathogenic, and parental karyotype we did, which was normal. So this was definitely something come from an additional segment. For this court which gives permission after 20 weeks, they did not accept this. They said, what do you mean by pathological? I said, unless we do further tests, we will not know, which was not available few years back. But since it was available, they insisted, and we did microarray. And in microarray also showed, it just showed that this was of the chromosome 9. Now the consequences was characterized, which is characterized by developmental delay, intellectual disability, then behavioral problems, and distinctive facial features. So after this, it was accepted. By the time she had almost crossed 24 weeks. So I think whenever possible, the only pathogenic will not be accepted now, which I think one should, because as a doctor, we know that pathogenic is pathogenic. Next one, but patient anticipated loss of lot of increase NT. Most of the scans are done now for increase NT. Now this is a case of couple who had first normal child, second pregnancy there was increase NT, I think 5 mm, but they were not with us. They terminated the pregnancy. Next pregnancy also there was increase NT about 3.5, and they were ready for further investigations. So what investigations were done? Like, so in increase is about 3.5 millimeters. Then of course first trimester combined screening, or you can say non-invasive, depend on the time when patient may have an NT report, they may report late to you, and then it's difficult. But we have to know increased NT is associated with about 115 genetic syndromes like Noonan, achondrogenesis, and Smith-Lemli-Opitz, and more numbers. Now the microarray test showed that there was definitely an abnormality. It was heterozygous duplication, and the patient was having Charcot-Marie-Tooth syndrome. Now definitely now see it was increased NT, and we did parents also, but parents was normal. So this was a new mutation, or maybe parents were having it at gonadal level. So gonadal mosaicism is one very important point we have to check into this. So increase NT with normal karyotype, one has to go for microarray. And why not directly? Because you might miss all translocations on microarray, and recurrence risk estimation because. Now, clinical observation is very important, and in that, this is a case where there was this gentleman had come for microdeletion for karyotype and microdeletion because of oligospermia. I looked at his wife, who was also in the cabin. She had a lot of marks on the face, and when I asked her that I want to intrude you in personal history, but did you have severe acne? And I knew that it didn't look like acne, but she said, no, I am a case of neurofibromatosis. I said, did you tell your IVF doctor? She said, doctor never asked. What I want to insist here is always ask family history when only male comes for investigation and genetic evaluation is to be done for that. Always take importance of family history is here. And then we told her, luckily she didn't have symptoms, but her twin sister also was having neurofibromatosis who had a daughter with nobody ever had counseled them for that. Because sometimes patient may have severe symptoms. Grandmother also was there, so I went into entire history. And now in between there was skipping of generation. As I told you, in autosomal dominant disorders, sometimes you have to always see that there can be a skipping. So sometimes expressivity is very low. So it appeared as skipped generation. So then counseling becomes very important here. The next one is now, next slide, which we will see is of retinitis pigmentosa. Here, the cases, both the cases were referred again. One was by IVF, one was in pregnancy. The next, the left-hand side, which is there, three siblings were having retinitis pigmentosa, and the person, the first one who was married, was asked to come for. He was asked to take sperm donation. Now, looking at the history, we know it is horizontal transmission, so it is recessive, and he will not require sperm donation unless his parent is, his partner is also carrier. So though we knew, we guided him that you have to do your post mutation analysis, not because your two sisters, it goes theoretically, but we have to find out your mutation. Then also we told him that your partner also needs to have it. It could be just she may be a carrier. Now also the counseling was required for other two siblings as well. Now, second case came in pregnancy, though that way quite late, where the gentleman, which is where the arrow is shown, he was having a retinitis pigmentosa. They had a consanguineous marriage and they wanted prenatal diagnosis. In this case, when we did mutation analysis, he had three types of genes and the disorder could have been autosomal, and this type of retinitis pigmentosa can be inherited as recessive, dominant or sex-linked. So we had to identify this. So of course, directly prenatal diagnosis was required. Almost we had to do it simultaneously for lack of time. His mother was also having a carrier. So the dominant gene, which was UNC 119, which you see here, this was a dominant gene, and that is why he had got it. The ABCA4 was a recessive gene. So it was in the mother, but it was not necessarily to be present in the fetus because the partner was not a carrier. We also counsel for his sister because who was unmarried. So it's important that you counsel other family members that she also has to go to the mutation study. Now clinically, now there are a lot of therapies are coming, and a person is having RPGR kind of gene mutation. Today, retinitis pigmentosa has got a treatment. So unfortunately, I want to say that most of the referrals are coming to us through obstetrician. We have a history. They go to the obstetrician. Even in the other fields, I don't think there is much awareness that they should get evaluated their patients for a genetic mutation. Of course, now this is again inheritance clinical observation. We have finished. Now next we are going to round sequence of tests. In round sequence of tests, because the new test of sequencing is that you really jump at it. When you jump at this disorder, what you are seeing here is that first there was a missed abortion, then next there was an IUFD, and then immediately this person, well-to-do, was directly advised sequencing. Now the sequencing report came normal, and then patient was came to us. We said, "Have you done your karyotype?" He said, "No, we have done a high-end test, and it was just a translocation which was in the husband. So sequencing was not required." So I've given you that big chart just now to take a picture so that you can also look at that and see what. Of course, you should consult an expert as well. So now the risk will be for chromosomal disorder, not for single gene disorder. So possibility of this getting transmitted, the consequences can be they can have a normal child if the normal chromosome goes from the husband, or they can have a child who will be having a defective because like if they get genes as karyotype as like husband, then the chances that fetus will be normal but carrier like husband, or abnormal, or can be like a husband, or it can be only directly normal if the child gets. So this kind of counseling is to offer. He gets a normal karyotype. So none of the height and tests are required. Now, this
Great.
changing scenario in Duchenne muscular diagnosis is earlier it was in 1974, sex determination was the only thing which was offered to DMD cases where if fetus is normal, then fetus can be lost. I mean, male fetus were lost because they would out of fear terminate a pregnancy. All the tests came in between where we had to, identify the gene in an affected child. But now today we have reached in an era where application is such that without going into any investigation of parent, means a female because it is a sex link or affected child, we can directly offer them diagnosis in the fetus if there is a history of Duchenne muscular. Another thing is that one here I have put that germline mosaicism. We have cases where mother and daughter both have got Duchenne muscular dystrophy children, but the mutation is not there in them. So this is called as germline mutation. So that germline mosaicism, so which will not be there in the parent. So if there is any history of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, now even if you are doing the fetal genetic diagnosis, germline mosaicism is to be kept in mind. Now today, FDA-approved therapy is available again for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, but again the gene is very long, 79 exons. So skipping of 53 exon skipping will require mutation analysis will be required because the therapy which is there is for this particular gene. So affected child sometimes comes to you with a parent, and parents say we want a treatment for this. We do not want children. Even then, you have to do mutation analysis and find out the mutation so therapy can be planned. Again, this is adult genetic disorder, Huntington disease. Now, this gentleman, when there is the arrow which is there. Now, there was a query that he could be a carrier, but wife was already pregnant. He had so many family members. Fortunately, one which is shown in the picture is a Huntington patient. And he said, what I find is that all my family members who are having Huntington are requiring additional healthy member. I want to stop. I'm ready to take even sperm donor if I am a carrier. There was, for want of time, we had to do his CVS, which actually was not required. But then he wanted to know in his baby because there was no time to wait for his results and then do prenatal diagnosis. So this particular fetus was normal because he was also not a carrier. So now further pregnancies he does not require prenatal. Now it was not possible to see other family members also he brought. So even the vigilant family member is important in giving history. We may have to have one family and multiple genetic tests. And then we'll go to the so one family and multiple genetic tests. Now this was a myotonic dystonia patient, which is WAP. Now the arrow is there, and myotonic dystrophy gene was identified in her when she was, because there was late expression. Before that, she had got a child. Both were evaluated, and the child was having myotonic dystrophy. The mother was carrier, which was detected, which was 23, 24. They had lost one more child, and then they were not ready to take any chance. So they wanted to take a donor. So in this case, the donor, whenever you are doing donor screening, it is important to do complete carrier screening for the couple, as well as if you are taking a donor of the donor and the husband, or if you are taking sperms, donor and the sperm donor and the wife. So if wife is donor, the egg donor. Now here what happened, they had taken donor from family who was 35 years, not related, blood related. But we told her that we'll have to do it for Down syndrome testing also. Now, when we said we do screening, the carrier screening, which expanded carrier screening, the husband, whose sperms were going to be used, was also having this carrier screening showing that there was a gene mutation on CH, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and girl was also having a congenital hyperplasia gene. So, in addition to maternal age, in addition to other markers, if at all we get, they were required, may not be myotonic, but congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So they decided to do their own screening, but unfortunately, anyway, it was going to be risk. So they continued with the pregnancy. We did the testing, but the last fetus also was affected. Now they have not got back to us. Whenever you are doing single gene disorders, like we have done in this case number 5, you can see there was a history of thalassemia, but we did karyotyping as well. It is mandatory that we do it. She did, the fetus was normal for thalassemia, but she had 47 plus 21 chromosomes for Down syndrome. So it is now mandatory that you do both the things together. Now we'll just skip some slides and we'll go directly. Of course, in colon screening also, we can do for cancers also. I think we can skip that. Now it is possible to do it. Now success story, Ashkenazi Jews. Now all this what talk I am giving is only diagnosis or carrier screening. But look at this success story in Ashkenazi Jews. Where 20% of the total, there are 20% of Nobel laureates are Jews, but they are 1 in 3 carriers of many genetic disorders like Tay-Sachs disease or Gaucher's disease, cystic fibrosis. So they decided that they will have a complete genetic screening program for the population in the churches and also in pre-marriage cancer, pre-marriage testing. And mandatory healthcare organizations are there. And almost Tay-Sachs now, no Tay-Sachs children are born in them because this is compulsory in population. Same happens with the Republic of Cyprus. 1 out of 7 carrier for beta thalassemia, and prevalence of homozygotes is 1 in 1,000. Now the improvement of medical care, treatment and prenatal diagnosis today, carrier may be born because carriers are normal, but now not a single child with thalassemia is born. Coming to the next slide, which is a very sad story of India. Beta thalassemia, we know we are into Mediterranean region and risk is very high. We have 10 to 15,000 thalassemia majors and 3.6 to 3.9 crore carriers. Now an inheritance of 25%, and still the screening is not compulsory. We sometimes when patients come for say Down syndrome also, we see to it that we always look at this whenever possible, we speak to the consultant. And you can see that this case on the left hand side in one of the metros, very affording couple, low hemoglobin was completely neglected in a wife, and no electrophoresis was done. Carrier status was not detected, so husband was not detected. She got a beta thalassemia major child, and they, of course, they could afford, so they have underwent bone marrow transplant. Child is doing well, but if they can lose it, they can miss it, then you can just imagine what will happen. So compulsory program, and all the obstetricians, I'm sure majority of them are looking into it. But if not, please see and ask thalassemia. Also, I heard in this talks that radiologists, very nicely it was stressed that yes, even radiologists or fetal medicine people or other obstetricians must have family history, ethnicity, and routine carrier screening, because wife may come from another community, a different ethnic background. So it's very important that we include. There is no need to drop pedigree, but ask the question. Simple screening methods are there, like cascade screening, parents, siblings. You can have school going, you can have the antenatal screening, or you can have when there is already an affected family member. Last but not the least, I would like to say is that we are all the time in PGTPG. We are all the time trying to tell that yes, prenatal diagnosis, but it is also possible now to give pre-implantation, offer pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. So genetic testing, like some patients, this is offered to one who are not willing to undergo prenatal diagnosis, but pros and cons with PGD to be discussed with the experts. Because today we have PGT-A is being applied. Most of the IVF people, they do screening, and especially with repeated abortions and no reason found, advanced maternal age. So multiple embryos are screened and then they are offered this test. And also in the structural abnormalities, like what we saw in the 9 chromosome, there was extra markers. So if there is a structural abnormality, we can detect that. Or so they have to do prenatal diagnosis, but they may opt for pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. Also for molecular testing, many molecular testing are having this. So depending on the clinical indication, single defects, balanced translocations, one can offer. And only thing is that we have to explain them to go through the advanced, explain them what advanced test they will have to go. But many nowadays prefer that we would rather store the embryo and screen before the traumatic experience of termination comes. I think this is what it is. And acts and policies are there in India. Anybody into fetal medicine, India and worldwide. So again, you can take a picture of that, and you should go through all the laws if you are into fetal medicine. Today now in India, Rare Disease Act, and recently, I think a few months back or a couple of years back, recognizing the high number of patients, I also mentioned that you don't have to just diagnose and tell them. Those affected children usually they bring to you. So you have to guide them also that there are high number of patients with rare diseases like yours, but Government of India has started a crowdfunding portal. Corporate and individuals can donate online money for treatment of patients affected. So it is a responsibility of a genetic counselor and whoever is trying to give counseling to the patient to give them all these aspects. Of course, in conclusion, what we are going to say is genomic studies have increased scope of prenatal diagnosis, needs a planned approach, index case evaluation, DNA storage of a child, fetus, or products of conception, and of course, informed consent must select accredited lab, pre and post-net genetic counseling, and of course, increasing awareness through various talks. I make an effort to give talks in more than medical. I give for Ganeshotsav or wherever possible. I try and give the talks in them. So unless you encourage the population, increase the awareness, not doctor among the population, it is really difficult task. Now, of course, thank you all for this and to my colleagues who trusted us all these years for their support and of course my teamwork which is making my dream work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hema Purandare, for discussing and giving the insight on genetic counseling, on the newer trends, and of course, even on the CSR activities that we all need to do. And in fact, it was an insightful experience for all of us.